everybody. Welcome back to the Everything Auburn podcast. Dalton Odom and Carter Gustin here. This is our 8th episode, but believe it or not, it's Carter and I's 7th for being both of us each.
We were doing the math earlier because I didn't get added to the podcast till after we did the first one, and Dalton was on medical leave for one of them.
Dalton had a concussion, but we're back and better. It's okay.
Although the pollen is trying to keep me out of it right now.
Dude.
I'm really fighting it pretty hard.
It's so bad.
But welcome back. We got another wonderful guest here. Another member of the Auburn family.
Yes.
And I'm really excited.
Yeah, we have Miss Julia Wiard here today. She leads the leadership minor, which I am extremely glad and lucky I got to take one of her classes when I was an undergrad. And before we start, we have some of your Rate My Professor reviews that we would like to read.
Oh, my goodness.
We wanted to start with embarrassing
We're putting her on the spot for these. We did not tell her about this part. So we have 3 of them, so we'll start. Miss Wiard is an all-time favorite professor here at Auburn. I learned so much about myself through the leadership minor program. That's the first one. Second, Julia is simply the best professor at Auburn. She is passionate about Auburn's leadership minor program. She tries to get to know all the students in the class and gives great lectures. And then number 3, my time in the leadership minor has been incredible. I've learned different leadership styles, communication tactics, and what it takes to be an effective leader on campus. So if that doesn't tell you anything about the guests we're going to have here today, I don't know what will, but what do you have to say about all that?
Feel free to react.
I really appreciate that. I cannot bring myself to look at those. My students know I don't look at Rate My Professor. They've mentioned it a few times, like, oh, yeah, your reviews are good. What's funny, though, is I have 2 daughters. They're 15 and 17, and they love to read my Rate My Professor and like to kind of roast me with the comments sometimes when we're in the car.
It's good dinner conversation
so
stuff.
It is good dinner conversation. But I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. As evident by these comments, but you do some really incredible stuff with leadership. It's such a cool major or minor to take.
Yeah.
And it covers, we met about a year ago to do a video. And what was so intriguing to me is how applicable it is in every student can benefit from it. And it's so cool because I'm sure you get such a wide range of students you get to interact with.
I do. And that's honestly my favorite thing about the minor because it's very centrally housed. So it's part of University College, which is in the office of the provost. We're able to draw students from all majors and all disciplines, which just brings such a depth of conversation and experience into class. It's just really fun. And Dalton, you probably remember a little bit of that experience as you have students that are just having this wide variety of leadership roles on campus. Some come into class and they haven't really had that organizational experience yet, or they maybe haven't had a job or a team experience where they've really gotten to think about what kind of leader they want to be. And they get in that class and they get to hear from each other and learn all of these new things. And that's probably my favorite part of it is just the different students that I get to work with every semester.
Yeah, that's incredible. So in thinking of leadership minor, here's the first thing I think of, right? Or the first question I really am curious about. Leadership is very subjective.
Yes.
College classes, very objective. How on earth do you teach a subjective concept in an objective way?
You try to blend the two.
Okay.
One of the things I approach both of my classes with, so I teach an intro course and then I teach a capstone course. The intro course are students who typically have not had other leadership classes within the minor yet, or students that are taking it just as a free elective. And so those students are all coming in with this perspective from their major, from their previous experiences, from things that they did in high school. And so what I try to do is present the information in a way that I hope they're filtering it through those experiences and saying, okay, she talked about, like right now in my intro course, we're talking about group dynamics. So we're talking about stages of development. And what I hope they're doing is taking that information and saying, what does that look like for me? What does that look like in my organization or at my job or in my athletic team or even in my future job that I might have?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's so incredible. It's because there's nobody that you can benefit from it.
Absolutely.
And I can only imagine how fun it is to be in those classes because it's so much conversation and there's so much group work and group think, and it's just it sounds so much fun. I hate that I didn't take it. I'm so jealous of Dalton.
Just come back and audit it now.
I really should. I need it. I have people that works for me, and I'm like, I should probably take that.
You should.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. I'll take it.
So fun fact for me, when I took her class, it was the semester that COVID broke out. And so I got to see her she was already a leader. Obviously, she was leading her classroom, but even more firsthand, you were navigating so many different things. I mean, we all were.
Yeah.
But
you got to use some of your class.
Yeah.
I really did, and I've still continued to use it. We're getting to a point where students, kind of like yourself that were here during COVID, have graduated and are in their professional roles. Most of the students that we have now, we're still in junior high and high school, but we still talk about it a fair amount in class. We talk about that very adaptive quality that every one of us, whether you were a student, whether you were a teacher, whether you were in your professional role, almost everyone had to adapt in some way. And I know for me, you got to experience. I had never recorded a lecture before. I had not taught a class on Zoom. I think I had only used Zoom a handful of times prior to that. And suddenly, within a few days, was trying to figure out how to pivot a class that I had taught for almost a decade into this new format and still keep the students engaged and still sort of help them stay connected and finish out that semester. So it was very challenging, but at the same time, the things that I learned from that experience, I still incorporate into the classroom. And then some of the examples that I learned, I'm still using as examples 5 years later.
Yeah.
So another fun thing that I happen to know about the leadership minor that I have a bit of inside baseball information on, I'm sure you know where I'm going, is was it last summer you guys got to do a study abroad?
Yes,
yes. You were in
How did you know that?
You told me about it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot we talked about that when we were doing the video last year.
We talked about it because we had just met and you had just found out that it was even going to be happening. You went to Madrid.
We did. We spent about a month in Madrid.
How was that?
That was an incredible experience. And to be able to teach in such a concentrated environment, usually we're stretching things out over 4 months. And to teach a class in 3 weeks and to have those students for 3 hours every day, normally you teach a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, and after 50 minutes, they're packing up and going to the next class. And this was their sole focus for that 3-hour period every morning. And the conversations that we got to have, when you've got 3 hours, you can really get into some pretty good conversation. You can do some activities that we couldn't do in 50 minutes that we were a little bit more limited on on-campus courses. It was an incredible experience. It was also something I got to share with my family, which I think has been really a thread throughout my entire experience at Auburn, is really getting to share that with my husband and with my daughter. So to get to have them be part of that was really special too.
Wonderful. Well, that kind of naturally leads to kind of the next thing, which is my favorite question to ask anybody ever is, tell me how you got to Auburn. What's your kind of Auburn journey, what you got here, how that kind of worked out for you?
And I think you and I have talked about this
I'm pretty
before,
sure we
too.
have.
I feel like I have a memory of talking to you about this, but my Auburn story has a couple of twists and turns to it. So I grew up, I'm from Selma, Alabama, which is about 2 hours away from Auburn, and grew up in an Auburn family. My dad went to Auburn. My grandparents went to Auburn, several other extended family members, and grew up really loving Auburn. And then my senior year of high school, probably the one really rebellious thing I've ever done was I said, I need a different experience. I need to get out of state and prove that I can do this. And I went out of state for my undergrad and my graduate degrees. And that was a really good experience to help me sort of build that independence as a leader and learn a little bit about myself. But ultimately, there's that little tick in the back of my mind of like, okay, but maybe one day I'll end up back at Auburn, or maybe this will be something that'll be in my path at some point. And I really can't take all the credit for it. My husband and I were living and working in Kentucky after we got married, and we had our first child. We were talking about what the future might look like. And he happened to attend a conference where there was somebody from Auburn there. They started chatting. He said, my wife's from the area. She's, from this big Auburn family. We'd love to get back to that area at some point. So Nick gets all of the credit for getting us here. And then about a year later, I can remember we had our second child at that point, and I'm kind of just enjoying spending time with them. And famous last words, I said, I think I'm kind of enjoying being home for a little bit. And my husband texted me one day, and he said, hey, listen, the job that you were doing at our previous institution is open at Auburn. And if you don't apply for this now, it may not come around again.
That's real. The
I mean, and
university
really and
jobs
truly,
stick,
you know,
they don't open
and this
up
was
much.
a great job working in leadership development,
Yeah.
and I can remember that text of, I think you need to go for this. It might not come back around, and so I was in that job for 7 years. Was really fortunate to get it, and I think our paths crossed when I was working in student affairs. While I was in student affairs, though, I had the opportunity to start teaching just one class in the leadership minor, and then one class turned into 2 classes, and then eventually it turned into the opportunity to direct the minor and teach both the intro and the capstone courses.
That's incredible. It's funny because that journey is very similar to mine. I grew up an Auburn fan. I did go to Auburn.
Yeah.
But then I left because I want to live out my own. And then I got a phone call from a friend. I was kind of in the process of looking for a new job. I was looking for a change. And I got a phone call from a friend said, do you know anybody who'd be good for this job? We had a job opening at Auburn. I was like, I might know somebody. Yeah. I kind of want to go back. But the other thing that I think is really cool, I'm getting to experience it now, just barely. My daughter is 2 years old. But growing up an Auburn fan, I mean, there's pictures of me at 5 years old at football games, rolling tumors, coming to campus. This place is I know this place like the back of my hand. And then getting to raise my daughter here and have a family here and getting to take them to do Auburn. I remember when I did this as a kid.
The year after we moved to Auburn, so we moved to Auburn in 2009, and our youngest daughter, Avery, was born that fall. And the next year was the year that we won the national championship. And so I have pictures of, at the time, I think my 3-year-old, which would be my oldest, who is about to be a senior in high school now.
Oh, boy.
Under all of the trees, and you can see the toilet paper kind of cascading over her head. And it's just some of my favorite memories of things like that. And they really have. They've grown up going to Greek Sing. They've grown up going to campus events. When they were little, if we went to something, they thought Albie was there to see them. And that has just been really one of the best things, is to be able to include them in that experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, do you have does anything put you on the spot here a little bit? And Dalton, I'll ask you the same question, put you both on the spot here. Any favorite memories you can think of? It can be leadership minor related.
Oh, wow.
Life at Auburn. I know you've had a couple positions and kind of transition here. Anything come to mind? Maybe I'll make Dalton go first.
Yeah.
Could be anything.
Should I go first since I'm the one who asked it?
Sure.
It's just to kind of give you a second to think about it. 'Cause I know what mine is for sure, because I used to work in athletics, right? So I used to work for football. And when I knew I was leaving, I had already accepted another position. I was leaving. It was mid-football season. I was working for football. And I was like, this is a dream, right? I was working my last home game. The team had just gone into the locker room, and I was like, I'm going to take a moment for myself. And I went and stood on the 50-yard line, midfield, 90,000 people, and I was like, I'm never going to do this again. And I was crying, my sunglasses up, nobody look at me, I'm okay. But it's definitely this really cool moment. But I think it's so interesting for people that grew up as fans, grew up coming to campus, and have come back professionally, worked here. You have such a life. You can't not think about it. I've described it as grandmother's cooking. It's oh man, man, do I miss my grandmother's, scalloped potatoes. It just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And I feel about Auburn the same way.
Yeah. Becoming the mic man was obviously.
That's a good one.
It'd been my dream since I was 13, and I didn't think it was going to happen. And so, fun fact for everybody, I didn't become the mic man until my 5th year of college. I went to Southern Union first, and I had transferred in, and not all of my credits transferred, so I had to do a 5th year. So it really worked out. And then I applied to grad school, did a 2-year program, so I got to do it for 3, which was great. But my last Iron Bowl at home, so the mic man always wears earplugs so he can kind of still hear himself as he's calling cheers from midfield. And right before I was about to do the last cheer, which is always great to be, I took one out just so I could fully hear how loud it was down there. And I started kind of getting choked up. I was like, I did this? I was like, it's not me. We're all cheering for Auburn. But me being just midfield, taking one out, I kind of got off beat a little bit, but I was like, I had to.
Me and Dalton also famously very emotional people.
We've cried on this podcast. How many? Just one?
The very first one, we both were sitting in the seats, single tear rolling down. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So
oh my Lord.
We're not afraid to.
No, that's fine.
It's fine.
That's fine.
Anyway, next.
I'll say this. This is not my favorite moment, Dalton, but I do remember when you were named Mic Man the first year, because you have these students in class, and sometimes you're lucky enough that you get to see them move into those leadership roles. And I remember you being named at call-outs that year and going, that's one of my students, even though I had been several semesters since you had been in my class, but I really remember the year you were named. It's not necessarily my favorite Auburn moment, but I do love those big moments when a student runs for something, or they apply for something, or they email me to let me know they got that job. It's cool to get to be part of that experience.
Oh, yeah.
So you talked about crying at Auburn, big Auburn moments. So I do that. My children give me a really hard time. Even there was the hype video for the basketball game that came out the other day that had Bryce Brown narrating. And I'm showing it to every member of my family. And you can see the tears welling up in my eyes. And my children are just going, so my favorite moment, and I don't know if you'll remember this one, but we're big gymnastics fans. We've been going to gymnastics meets since our girls were babies, because when they're little, it's contained, it's inside, they're not going to get too hot. And so
there's always something going on.
Well, and if you remember, years ago, I mean, I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. You used to be able to, like, if you were shorter than Jeff Grava, you could get in for free. And then eventually we started getting season tickets because we really liked the idea of, having these dedicated seats and, knowing that we could go to every single meet. And I was so thankful that we did. But I think, and I looked it up recently, I think it was 2016 was the first year that we beat Bama in gymnastics, and we were in the stands, and I had these two little girls there, and it was one of those things where, like, when they hit that last routine and you see the score go up and you know that they won, and I just start bawling. I don't know a single gymnast on the team that year. Like, I have no connection at all, but I just start bawling. And one of my daughters is looking at me like, what is wrong with you? But I love that we get to be part of those moments. And I think you said it really well. I mean, it just becomes part of your history. And we still talk about things. I'll text my husband some days and say, did you know it's been 6 years since this happened, or 10 years since this moment? And it really is. And for
Auburn
us,
will do that to you.
And you'll appreciate this as your daughter gets older, is it mile marks their life too, is you'll say, I can't believe that's been 10 years. They were so little when that happened, and now they're driving cars and thinking about going to college themselves. And do you remember how little they were when we went to that, or we got to experience that? So it really mile marks your family's experience too.
Yeah. I'm having a crazy, I don't want to say deja vu moment in my head, but just a memory that's popped up. So the semester that I took your class, there was another this was before I was a cheerleader. There was a cheerleader in that class.
You were a cheerleader?
There was a student in there named Charlotte Dayton who cheered here, and I remember walking into class that first day and being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous," because we sat like a few desks away from one another. But I think
awestruck.
Yeah, and the night call-outs happened, and I heard my name. She came up to me, also crying, hugged me, and was like, "I'm so proud of you." Because I had been, we were like one semester apart from that class. Anyway, it just reminded me.
Yeah,
because it was in her class. So
friendship's bonded in class.
Friendship, hey, Auburn.
Do want to bring it back to leadership, if you will.
Yeah.
What does kind of the future of the leadership minor look like? If you go on abroad again, what's it look like if I'm a prospective student wanting to get in leadership minor?
I'd love it if we have that opportunity to go abroad again. I think one exciting thing is just seeing the growth of the minor right now. So we're actually expanding the courses next year to offer more sections of the intro course, which will allow more students to get into that minor. It's still a great elective, too, for students who don't have that capacity to add a full minor to their curriculum, but just want a really good class to help either supplement something that they're maybe not getting, in their own curriculum, or something that they're doing on campus. I think that's the great thing about those classes, is it's something that you get to use instantly. You get to use it in your student organization. You get to use it in your job or your internship. You get to use it in your athletic team. And I love when students come back and make those connections in class. I think that's something I'm really excited is just to see the growth of the minor. It started as one student. There was one student when I started teaching in that minor, and now we have well over 100 students at any given time that are declared in the minor, and then many more that are just taking the courses as well. So that's something I'm really excited about. Every semester has been a little different, and other opportunities to either collaborate with other programs to help facilitate workshops. I've done work with Greek Life for several years, so we do a big leadership training with their recruitment staff once a year. That I think we're going on about 10 years.
That's incredible.
Of doing
Yeah,
that, where I go and do leadership training with all 150 of their recruitment staff. It is one of the highlights of my year. I look forward to it every single time. But doing more things like that, it's so fun to predict. And then whatever I think is going to happen, it just goes in the complete opposite direction of what we end up getting to do within that minor every semester.
Well, that's incredible. I think we're closing in on time, but I had one story I wanted to tell about you. It's a good story. It makes sure I wouldn't tell a bad story. So funny thing happens around the office, Dalton. I'm sure you've experienced this. It's like, hey, who are you guys having the podcast next? It's a question I get asked often. It was, we're having Julia Wiard, a leadership minor, and I was like, oh, she's the best. Oh, she's the best. And it's like, oh, I haven't met her, but I've heard she's incredible, right? And whenever I hear that, I always tell the same story. And this was such a great opportunity that I get to tell it to you, which is we met about a year ago for a video. You guys were shifting where the leadership minor was placed, and you want to kind of do a video promoting it. And we had like a 30-minute meeting. Nothing crazy, whatever. That video got delegated out. I didn't produce that video, so we didn't really interact that much. 6 months later, we're at an event. I think it was the holiday tree lighting ceremony at Sanford Lawn. About 6 months later, ran into you in line waiting for hot chocolate. You're like, oh, hey, Carter, how's it going? And it was such an impactful moment for me. It was so cool because you had no business knowing me. We'd met 6 months later.
That's not true.
Yeah, 6 months later. And the fact that you remembered my name, you wanted to talk to me, whatever. And it was such a really cool thing. And it's this, I tell that to everybody now, it's such an incredible moment. It's such a cool thing. And it really, it made me feel special. And it's not something that happens. As someone is horrible with names, are you about to cry? You're looking at me.
No, I'm not about to cry.
You're looking at me like you're going to. But it is. And it was really incredible. And I've told that story about 15 times in the last week or two.
Thank you.
Thinking about we're going to have Juliana. So I've told that to so many people. And I thought it was really cool that I would get a chance to tell you. That was really big for me.
Much. To me, it's the best thing about working at Auburn, though, is the relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I would tell anyone what the best thing, because we have friends that don't work for the university or don't live in Auburn, and they say, what is it like? What is it like? Mm-hmm. And it just is so much fun to build those relationships and to run into people at lunch and to run into people at the holiday lighting and to keep up with what their kids are doing. And to me, that is just my reason for coming to work every day is to get to build those relationships, whether it's with my students or with other people at the university.
Yeah. Well, it was really cool. It stuck out to me. It was really that was I
really appreciate
a long time ago, and I still think it feels like it was yesterday. It was really really incredible. Well, the closeout here, I want to, if there's someone wants a little bit more information, hear a little bit more about interest in leadership minor, what's kind of the route you want to should take to hear more about
so
learn more.
I'm the sole point of contact for the minor, so they can just email me. I'm so easy to find. It's Julia@Auburn. Somehow lucked into that email address about 13 years ago, and so it's Julia@Auburn, or they can go to our website, which is just the albylink/lead, so LEAD, or just Google leadership minor. Wonderful. And I love to talk to parents. I love to talk to students. Anyone that wants more information about it, I'm always happy to share some of the good things that people are doing within the minor.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for doing some incredible work and teaching the future.
Thank you.
And kind of helping the student body grow and be better leaders. It's an incredible work. Well, I think that's just about it for us. Thank you to Julia again for joining us and spending time with us. If you've enjoyed this, like hearing the sultry sound of our voices here, you can listen to more wherever you're listening to us now. There are more. We've spoken to Miss America. We've spoken to the strength coach of the Auburn men's basketball team. We've spoken to researchers. We've spoken to so many people, and there'll be more next month. So we're excited for that. Visit our podcast hub to see more, and excited for next time. But for Dalton and Julia and our producer over there off camera, Kim, I'm Carter. Thank you so much. And War Eagle.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.